meetup of the new year, I realized that I could have done it in the second Thursday after the new year, but what can you do? So Jay and I've been, how long have we known each other?
6 months.
6 months,
yeah.
and then I saw him talk about OSINT and AI, and I thought that would be a pretty good talk for him to come in, and he said yes, and now we're here. So I will leave it up to him.
Everyone hear me all right? The mic's working? Awesome. So I posted about OSINT because I've been running OSINT groups on Signal, and Edward offered me a spot speaking to you all. And I thought, what is something that you're just absolutely not going to hear about OSINT in Halifax? If you're in cybersecurity in Halifax by now, you've heard about what OSINT is, you've heard about OSINT software, you've heard about OSINT in Ukraine, you've heard about OSINT and other conflict zones, and OSINT and natural disasters, probably something available to you. But yeah, OSINT and anti-hate is something totally new. And I've been in my Signal groups, I had invited some anti-hate activists who are really big in the US, and I got to know them reasonably well. So I asked them if they want to be interviewed for this, and they offered quotes just for this presentation. So I'm a trained journalist. I've been published in CNBC, Voice of America, Small Wars Journal, and I'm used to doing interviews. And it was a big moment for me to actually be able to do this presentation, because we're talking about people who are on the front lines of anti-hate research, and really kind of brave and really interesting people, and some really famous people actually. One of the people interviewed for this presentation had Stormy Daniels on his podcast. Like this is how big his podcast is. So we're talking about like pretty big people agreed to be interviewed for this. So I was pretty excited about it. But it's also spectacularly dangerous. I am not an OSINT investigator or an anti-hate investigator myself. I'm a journalist, but I just moderate the Signal groups that these folk operate out of. Here's how dangerous it is. I interviewed in 2021 for Oxford Analytica, not to be mistaken for Cambridge Analytica. Oxford Analytica is a London-based consulting firm that do private intelligence, and they wanted a report on hate groups in Canada. So I paid for this report, and I contacted one of the experts in this, and he's with a think tank in Vancouver, and he put me in touch with one of the top anti-hate investigators in Canada who's in hiding. He's in hiding, and his co-founder on his nonprofit to investigate hate recently had anti-vaxxer protesters show up to the school where he teaches to stand across the street holding signs accusing him of every crime in the book. And they just stood there with his name, accusing him of every crime in the book, a line of people holding signs at the school where he teaches. And that's because he was an anti-hate investigator and he got outed. And then the person I was talking to was in hiding because somebody had leaked his name and his personal address and his family's address to neo-Nazi groups, because the QAnon people hoped the neo-Nazis would kill them, and then they would get the blame, so the QAnon people wouldn't have to get the blame for it. That's what anti-hate activism is on the front lines, is that kind of paranoid world, and how dangerous it is. And people I'm working with on Signal include people who have gotten shirk funding, Canadian government funding, even though they're U.S. based. Include people who have, the head of task force Butler, the veteran charity, anti-hate veteran charity, is interviewed in this, and my friend in Vancouver. I don't remember if he wanted me to use his name or not, so I didn't. But he said, you can quote me on this, but I got some super edgy quotes from him, so I don't want to compromise his identity necessarily. But he's probably the top person in Canada. He issued the reports that the Canadian government uses on anti-hate, and his boss at his think tank was the trainer on anti-hate for Canadian government people. And he actually said, he got me on a call and he said, I actually. He was him speaking. He actually personally vetted the CVs for all the people to present about OSINT to the Canadian government on anti-hate topics. And he told me on the phone, which I took as a huge compliment, you would not believe what I found in the background investigation for a lot of these people. Like you couldn't even imagine the type of stuff that he can find in the background investigation. So I took it as a big compliment. I mean, like, well, I guess I passed your background investigation, friend. So he got me on the phone and said that. So I think he's in the clear for me to use his name, but I'll ask him later. I'll send it out later if I get his permission. So I had a little anxiety about that. So the Signal groups I run that are OSINT groups, we'll get to those at the end, but those are, sorry I speak quickly, ode to a youthful drug habit and being manic depressive. I also teach a mental health advocacy course at the Art College at NASCAD when I'm not a journalist. But I've been running Signal groups that were sprouted out around the deployment to Afghanistan. After the fall of Kabul, a lot of US and Canadian combat interpreters were left in Afghanistan, and even US and Canadian citizens. So a lot of veteran charities came together of Afghan war vets from the US and Canada to get the former interpreters and the remaining US and Canadian passport holders out of Afghanistan. And I got started on that in 2021. I was recruited through connections from working in person in DC. And then when that switched to Ukraine, the first night of the Ukraine war, all of those groups shifted their focus to Ukraine, and a lot of folk deployed to Ukraine. It was overlap with the Ukraine Foreign Legion, and so I was a media lead on the main signal group for that from the first night of the war. And so then an ecosystem of signal groups sprouted out around that, around each different type of conflict or natural disaster or global hotspot. And I run the Canada group, and I've been running the Canada group since 2022. And I've been so a lot of veteran charities in the U.S. and Canada kind of collaborate with each other in the Canada group. And I've just been moderating it, but I don't do OSINT investigations myself. That's just a volunteer gig with the veteran charities, and it's led to more kind of concrete stuff that I can't put on my CV, like I trained veterans in the U.S. and in citizen journalism and stuff like that, and I've got I got one of my mentors a quote in the Wall Street Journal, and that was September 2024, because somebody that was in our signal group, our Ukraine signal group, she threw him out in 2023 and didn't really think much about him until he was in the news for being the second would-be Trump assassin. Actually, the second would-be Trump assassin was in our signal group. He was a Ukraine war vet. So that's what this is. That's who this is connected to. This is this U.S. Special Forces guys joined veteran charities, and that ecosystem is porous. It goes into celebrities, it goes into politics, it goes into all that. So my interview with Christopher Goldsmith from Task Force Butler. I have Christopher on Facebook, and that was kind of him. He's always, Task Force Butler is the premier nonprofit that investigates hate crimes and hate groups in the U.S., and they're all veteran run. Christopher's a war veteran in the U.S., and forgive my inability to do a PowerPoint. I've just never learned it. I think I de-skilled in tech along the way, so it's an ironic thing that I'm talking to you all, but I'm still a journalist in OSINT topics. Christopher has been a big help in this presentation, and you should check out his organization, Task Force Butler. However, if you want to be trained in Anti-Hate OSINT, I would recommend going to the training of 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗃, who we're going to talk later about. I didn't interview Kirby. She's too high profile. I didn't think it would be respectful to approach her to interview her for just this, because she's ex-CIA, everybody knows her. I would recommend getting training. She offers paid training. You can get paid training from Kirby, or you can get paid training from Justin Charters. And I should have brought Justin's name, but Justin Charters, Charters, and Justin is spelled with an E, Justen. If you go to Justin or Kirby for your training in OSINT, you'd be doing probably the best as far as the people in this community that I work with. Those are the two people that they would know and refer you to. And so here's Christopher. You can follow him on social media. He's an interesting character in so much he's very nice. Anti-hate campaigners tend to be very nice. It's a very nice culture. It's not very competitive. I know in a lot of the nonprofit circles, it can be very competitive. In OSINT, it can be competitive. I'm used to in the signal groups just meatheads, just butting heads, but that doesn't really happen in Anti-Hate. It's a very nice culture. It's very respectful. And so you can just reach out to Christopher yourself. Tell him he knows he's in this presentation. Tell him I referred to you or whatever. So here's Christopher's quote for this. I'm an AI skeptic when it comes to OSINT. There's no replacement for the cultural context a human being gains from simply watching extremists communicate and being present to understand the nuances of mimetic communication. This is something I've heard a lot interviewing OSINT experts, is that a human being is trusted considerably more. However, a drawback to this, to nuance this, is I interviewed an OSINT expert in the UK, and she told me that her coworker at her private intelligence firm in the UK got fired because he started trying to drum up business by making a SOC account and getting people talking in these forums under false pretenses. So the downside to a human doing it is a human can be entirely unstable, as an entirely unstable actor, and do something incredibly unwise and unethical like that. And so, I of course would side with Christopher Goldsmith on this. There is a human being really is necessary to observe a lot of this, just to get some of the nuances of what's going on. Okay, so then that brings us to our Vancouver-based expert, and he's been really great. He got me on the phone, and I shared a complaint about Bellingcat, and he disagrees with me about that. But Bellingcat, I have a real complaint about. So he is a higher up. Okay. So this is like I said, one of the only organizations in Canada on a policy level to be producing anti-hate reports. I'll even tell you the organization. I think I would like to do that. This is Cases Vancouver, CASIS Vancouver, and you can just check out their reports. Yeah, and I don't know if they're still functioning, but that's who was producing them at the time. And now I think he's moved on to just training Canadian government folk. I think he's in a direct government role now, which is cool. So his quote is, "From my experience, extremism OSINT differs from normal OSINT that you have to have a cultural understanding or you're going to miss whole conversations. This isn't something most AIs can pick up." So it's similar to what Christopher is saying. A human being's understanding of nuance and cultural competency can't really be computed with yet by a robot so far. I would note that a robot's capacity to pick up patterns, such as a tattoo or a slogan, is pretty good, but a robot's capacity to understand innuendo or hint, and everything in politics, once you get into the murky end, goes hard into innuendo and hint, should be practically zero. I think both of them have the point I would make, which is that we're talking about a community so murky, and we're talking about business so murky that you need a person to be able to just parse it. And that's definitely what I've got from all of them. So basically, for the most part, AI is still mainly only the domain of what can be found on Google without dark web access, so practically useless in some ways. I wouldn't go that extreme, because Kirby's lecture was a seminar that I attended, which Kirby demonstrated AI products in OSINT. It was pretty interesting. They can compile a great deal of information that would take a human being quite a long time to do instantaneously, so that's still true. But yeah, so basically, this is him touching upon a slide point that is worth noting. If in an intro OSINT lecture you're going to get elsewhere in Halifax, they're probably not going to mention this fact, but it's true, which is that most OSINT investigators are using HUMINT. OSINT is open source intelligence, as in whatever's publicly available. HUMINT is human intelligence, which is in interviews, like a journalist does HUMINT. More or less every OSINT investigator is a professional, is also doing HUMINT and just isn't saying it. So OSINT is HUMINT and OSINT in basically every professional case. Somebody's a professional OSINT investigator. So here he is slyly acknowledging that to say that OSINT is just publicly available information, aka what can just be gathered from Google or eventually AI, is an oversimplification. And even before you get into the fact that there's a lot of interviews that you can do in OSINT, there's also the fact that you can access behind paywalls that maybe AI wouldn't be able to access. You can access physical information. You can go to there's a lot of physical archives that are still useful for OSINT. That might sound a little silly, but being a trained historian would even benefit you potentially. You never know. Looking at somebody's family records, for example. So there's lots of cool stuff that you can do with OSINT that you can't just find by just letting a chatbot loose on Google, literally. So I wouldn't discount I wouldn't discount non-AI OSINT quite yet. The rise of RWE. RWE is right-wing extremism. That's the standard term. The rise of RWE led to a lot of people coming out of the groundwork as experts. I used to prep dossiers for, here's him talking down a bit before we were on the phone about it. I forgot he sent me a written quote about it. I used to prep dossiers for, I redacted it, meetings, and people would be shocked at what I find. I redacted the word CSIS. And people would be shocked at what I would find. And okay, I'll say our dispute about Bellingcat, just to be funny. I had a friend, and she said that her former partner had his work stolen by Bellingcat. Actually, that had his he did an OSINT work, and Bellingcat just harvested it, and the Bellingcat researcher took credit for it as if it was their own. And his argument was, we're all on the same side. You shouldn't care who gets credit if it's anti-Russia. And I'm just like, I guess, but I should watch my mouth. But Bellingcat are really, they just released a book called like The People's Intelligence Agency. It's not that at all. They're, I don't know. They're kind of like, they've done some problematic stuff. Like at one point they framed the Bucha massacre in Ukraine like it was a single rogue Russian unit from a non-ethnically Russian part of the country, which is totally false. So as in framed it like the Bucha massacre, like it was not Russian government policy. It was and them and the New York Times collaborated on this big expose about how a single unit in Russia was rogue, and that's how the Bucha massacre happened, when in reality, like across Ukraine, Russia was committing massacres like every day. And all the war crimes you could name that happened in the Bucha massacre were just a regular fact of life in Ukraine. But then the New York Times and Bellingcat framed it, and it was really important. I'm a propaganda analyst talking, writing for Voice of America. They framed it like a rogue unit breaking Russian government policy is even a concept, would not create fits of laughter on the Ukrainian military side. Like, so risks of anti-hate research in Canada. This was my slideshow too. The risks of anti-hate research are really extreme. It's just, a lot of these groups are just unwieldy, and they're guys with too much time on their hands. And this is before the rise of 764. Does anybody not know what 764 is? Okay, you got to know what that is if you're in cybersecurity, yo. 764 is a hate group that does online sextortion scams, and they are the fastest growing hate group in North America, and they're the fastest growing online hate group. And basically, like they use Roblox and stuff to target kids. They're the single biggest cyber threat that is new to like the last 12 months, and that's domestic to North America. So definitely look into that. A child was arrested for being in 764 in Halifax within the last 3 months, I think. So we're talking a really serious threat. Like this is especially if you have kids, this is a really bad issue actually. So look into 764. They're named after, I believe, the area code of a town in Texas where one of their like half a dozen founding members lived. And then it spread like wildfire. And it's a really scary group. Their fun fact, their patron group in the formalized neo-Nazi movement. I learned this at a conference in Halifax, actually, at King's College on Satanist groups. There was a King's College conference in 2024 on Satanist groups, and there was an anti-hate researcher from Toronto, and he talked about how the patron group in the white supremacist movement for 764 were called the Order of Nine Angles, not angels, angles. This was just random gibberish at some point. The Order of Nine Angles. Order of Nine Angles founder actually converted to Sunni Islam to join ISIS, then converted back to radical Christianity while still running the Order of Nine Angles while they were the patron group of 764. So if you can't extrapolate from that what you need to, then I don't know what to tell you.
764 was inspired by business student someone found him. He was inspired on a Discord server.
The original arrest was a Central American New Yorker of non-white Central American ancestry who was arrested in New York City, I think. But you can find, if we have Google, you can bring him up. He would pose in photos on social media with those glowing red eyes that mask you can wear with. Yeah. I think this is what I got. From my own understanding of 764, I'm not an expert. This is just what I got from the 2024 lecture at King's College, actually. So I'm trusting our guy that I met in person over the online experts. But it was an academic conference. It wasn't a political conference. It was these were just professors around North America. Most of the conference was Mount Satanic Panics, actually. So it was kind of a cool conference. It was nice of King's to put that on. I'm a King's journalism grad myself. Melissa was kind enough to look over my slides. Melissa's an Indigenous activist based at St. FX, where I went to undergrad before King's journalism. And she looked over my slides and offered a quote as well. She's also a neurodiversity activist. Like I said, I do some kind of neurodiversity adjacent work. Amidst growing polarization and the post-truth sway of algorithms, we must recenter genuine dialogue among diverse groups. To move forward, we need to hear one another's struggles and wants, consciously shifting from a place of hate to a stance of curiosity. So if you detangle Melissa's academic background, you can get to the post-truth sway of algorithms. In Melissa's field, she was on the Anti-Hate committee during a grad school, ever grad school university, I forget which it was. Melissa's field, post-truth is how algorithms are described, because we're so beyond any concept of fact checking that's not really a concept, and also the kind of academic attitude that we already live in a kind of post-truth world, that truth is relative and it is about whose truth, and the truth of the powerful versus the truth of everybody else has been turned on its head by hate groups who are representing the truth of the powerful only, but often people from extremely fringe backgrounds. So that's Melissa's quote. How much time do I got? Lots. Okay, cool. A bunch of that will have to be questions then, because I didn't prepare that long of a presentation. What about, we can also just do a lot of networking at the end of it. What about the case in favor? 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗂𝗍 𝗧𝗹𝗸. Oh yes. So here's 𝗙𝗲𝗁. She's a U.S. military veteran, business owner, board member, OSC certified podcast host. 𝗙𝗲𝗁 was an Arabic linguist in the military. He started sharing what she knew with team members in a newsletter and grew from there. She left her CIA background off of this, but you can find that on LinkedIn. She's the founder of Plessis Experts Network, which offers training classes, webinars, and OSINT investigations. She also co-hosts the OSINT Cocktail podcast, where they talk about investigations and techniques seen in movies and television shows. She's also on the board at Osmosis. So if you're an OSINT, or if you want to break into OSINT, they have the big conference in OSINT, and you can attend that. I believe that was in London last year, London, UK, and not London, Ontario. But I think they've had OSINT conferences in Canada. I think there was one at Niagara Falls or Toronto, something like that last year. I don't really attend them because they are a really competitive field, and as my expert friend said to me, and I quoted him in that, there's a lot of people in OSINT who are just, honestly, you just don't want to deal with. And I get that in my signal groups all the time. There's a lot of big egos, and there's a lot of people with questionable qualifications, which is why I don't call myself one at all. Here's some of 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗂𝗍𝗁's LinkedIn, and so 𝗙𝗲𝗁 hosted the seminar on AI and OSINT, and this was the only real attempt at that among the mainstream OSINT professionals. So I, of course, wanted to sign up for that and see what it's all about. The number one lesson that 𝗙𝗲𝗁 learned midway through is that AI companies are fast adjusting to people using it for OSINT and are trying to hamstring that by banning the term OSINT from their search. as in you can't even say, can you give me OSINT on this topic or this topic? They will actually refuse to give you search results because they don't want you using it for anything illegal, or they don't want you using it for anything political. So for using OSINT on an AI program, you need to outwit the AI program at this point. You need to actually be able to trick the AI program into thinking it is not doing OSINT for you. And that's how nearly all AI programs are worried about lawsuits, of course, and worry about, of course, stalking is a big issue with OSINT. And that's why I don't really get into it myself. If I've never really done it, nobody can accuse me of misusing it. If honestly, if you're trying to learn OSINT on AI, I'd recommend learning manual OSINT first. I would recommend. I have myself. I'm the type of person who would walk right in front of the camera and go, "What? Am I not supposed to be here?" and like stop right where it is. I'm certain the only way to learn OSINT with AI is to first understand OSINT manually, because you also need to be able to know what to tell the AI to do. Especially because at that point you're in a battle of wits with your AI. How are you going to get the AI to produce results that the company definitely doesn't want you to get? However, of course, OSINT is a lot of work. If you're looking at databases for information, it can take you, you can produce in several minutes what it would take you weeks to do, or more. I mean, one of the great victories of AI in Canada, at least, was an OSINT tool was rescued. You must have heard this. You must have all heard that. You must be sick of hearing this by now. But somebody in Toronto saw that the heritage website for heritage sites in Canada was being taken down, and they used AI to harvest the whole database of heritage sites and all the photos and all the profiles and recreate it in a new website. All like 13,000 pages of it. And they did that in a very short period of time, right before the Canadian government defunded it and shut it down, which was robbing everybody of a really important resource. I don't know how they're going to update it, but it was a really impressive feat. It was one of the only times I've heard AI just triumph, and nobody can really argue against that. So that's an OSINT resource that was rescued using AI. So AI is still invaluable, but if it is, while using AI for OSINT, you are in a battle of wits with the AI companies and with the AI that's learning your behavior and trying to adjust. And it's not going to. Those companies don't want you using it for OSINT at this point. So from Kirby's online self-paced courses, it's clear the improper OSINT alone can leave one with misconceptions about hate groups. Yeah. So I would recommend signing up for Kirby's. Specifically anti-hate, I recommend signing up to Kirby's anti-hate online lessons. They don't even cost anything; they're free. There's a list of resources. It's amazing the kind of hogwash out there. I learned a bunch of stuff, terminology, symbolism, stuff like that. It's basically the only it's basically one of the only real kind of all-in-one place databases. Guide to Hate Groups is in Kirby's lessons. So you check out Plessis, the training website, and you can just get in there and access some of those courses, and you can really find some cool stuff. Kirby's list of terminologies and resources clearly show that this course. Sorry, I use everybody's first names. I use everybody's first names no matter what, and that's because it's to separate what I'm doing from journalism. And I don't want to accidentally disrespect somebody by using their last name about them. So unless it's journalism, I use everybody's first names in all cases. Kirby's list of terminology and resources clearly show that the discourse being used in popular culture and by talking heads on TV is woefully inadequate. Yeah, it's stuff you wouldn't even believe people get wrong. So finish your research before reaching conclusions. Of course, the final conclusion of the only real significant mainstream OSINT trainer teaching a course on AI and OSINT was that you still definitely need Google. And do I use Google's Oh, AI, yeah, of course. Google's AI is pretty good, actually. There's the joke that it's going to tell you to eat rocks because it's good for your health because an Onion article said to eat rocks. That it still messes things up all the time. Like if I say, like, what conference is in this city that I'm about to visit? It will give me a conference from a totally different country that happened in 2023. It doesn't care. But Google's AI is still okay if you fact check it. Actually, it saves you a lot of time actually, and it can find stuff that you can't really get all in one place. So yeah, most OSINT professionals I know would have not fully gone both feet into AI. I don't know a single OSINT professional who is now both feet in AI. In fact, as we've discussed earlier in this presentation, most OSINT professionals I know are actually at both feet not in AI still. So that's the state of the field. Okay, so then what is their political opinions about the use of AI? There is a nonprofit who I was going to interview for this, but they ghosted me. They're called Stop Killer Robots, and they're based in the UK. Stop Killer Robots were founded before the Ukraine war, so before anybody had any idea what was going to go on with drone warfare, before drone warfare became as normal to warfare as tank warfare, far more normal. Actually, at this point, drone warfare is more normal than tank warfare is. Before any of that, Stop Killer Robots saw that coming, and they created a short film called 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗃 in 2017, which is free on YouTube. I was going to show you the short film. I figured that'd be testing your patience. It's about 15 minutes long, and it's literally just about a private company in America killing everybody's families and getting away with it because of drones and AI, harnessing the power of drones and AI unchecked by government regulation. 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗃 is you can say it's aged in kind of an amusing irony now that all this stuff is so normal, but it's also aged somewhat prescient. I mean, the drones now can do what the drones and the 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗃bots can do, which is use facial recognition to seek out people in a crowd and kill them specifically in swarms. That was science fiction in 2017. That is now a relatively uncontroversial suggestion that the swarm of drones could do that right now. I would recommend checking out 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗃bots as just a historical document. It's kind of interesting. So I contacted Stop Killer Robots on LinkedIn. You're like, oh, hey, do you want to be interviewed? And they replied yes, but they replied yes a month later. And then when I'm like, oh, great, when would you like to be interviewed? They just never replied to that. And this is kind of polite brush off, but you get the sense that they've kind of given up. I think a lot has changed in politics and in drone warfare since 2017, and they just aren't still doing it basically. So this is a screen still from the film 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗃bots, as you can tell, they even kind of got the look right. They even in 2017 they kind of didn't botch that, but it's a little silly now looking back. So here's my new boss at the OSINT Output. The OSINT Output is a podcast. I'm like, when they wanted me to interview me on the OSINT Output podcast, I'm like, I looked them up on YouTube, and I'm like, we're talking between 10 views and 100 views on all your YouTube videos. How many people are actually reading this? It turns out lots. They just don't go to the YouTube. They just go to Spotify. So a lot of OSINT professionals like the OSINT Output. Chris and Tim are currently with U.S. military contractors, but they're big enough in the U.S. military that Tim co-authored the updated version of the U.S. Army Guide to OSINT, which you can get the original version. It's free online, but the updated version is not released yet. It's still getting cleared to be released. The updated U.S. Army Guide to OSINT, Tim co-authored it. So they host me on the OSINT Output podcast. They talk to me a bit about the signal groups and what's going on in those, and they talk to me a bit about propaganda. My background with propaganda is I studied propaganda studies on a master's level during my master's at the University of Ottawa, and then two failed attempts at a PhD, one at LSU in Louisiana and one at Exeter in the UK. I never attempt grad school again because nobody would ever let me into a grad school program again. Then I worked at Voice of America for 5 years, so a propaganda professional. These days, it is called disinformation. So I have published twice on this, once at a newspaper in the US and once in the Good Men Project this month. The Good Men Project published my piece on this. So ever since propaganda studies, which was around was replaced around 15 years ago with the term disinformation and disinformation studies. There's been kind of a shift in attitudes where no longer can anything be called propaganda because it's seen as unscientific. So it's either disinformation or it isn't. But if it's disinformation or it isn't, you can't, there's no middle ground. You can't be slightly critical of something. You have to either tar and feather the whole thing, or it is not even going to be discussed. So it's really removed self-reflection from U.S. politics. I think the shift from calling things propaganda, calling things disinformation, and it's also created a toxic culture, which I discussed in my publication this month, in which, in the Good Men Project, in which calling something disinformation, and this is relevant, calling something disinformation is seen as fair game, even if you haven't researched it at all, and it's easily verified on Google. So this is also true of AI. So commenting on something on LinkedIn that you don't like because you don't agree with it ideologically and saying, is this AI? Or this looks like AI, or this is AI, is a normal bot thing. Literally, Moscow's bots are going around calling all the inconvenient evidence AI right now, and just nobody's calling them on it. Everyone's too afraid of arguing with somebody who is supposedly exercising critical thinking. So this is a loophole through which a bot or troll can operate, is by tarring something as AI or as disinformation, and probably do so with impunity. Nobody's ever going to call them on it for the most part. And so my Good Man Project article is like, next time you see something that's real, that you know is real, being questioned as if it's disinformation or AI, definitely comment on that person's comment and say, well, if you had Googled this, you would have found this, and provide a link. Or that's dotting your I's and crossing your T's really in anti-disinformation, because it's not letting the other side create this kind of willful blindness owing to this hysteria about what is true and what isn't. We aren't at a point where it's impossible to verify anything, and we're probably never going to be at that point, because you can't fake what's on the CNN or BBC website. So you can verify a lot of stuff, and so it is different. Good disinformation hygiene is making sure nobody's calling your true evidence AI as well. And so that's what I talked about on the OSINT output as well. And so now I write for their blog. So now Tim and Chris are my boss. I write for the OSINT Outputs blog. I interviewed a few friends on that. My next interview will be with a retired British diplomat, Greg Quinn. He's from Northern Ireland, and he was an ambassador to various Caribbean nations, various Caribbean high commissions, and he was also the consul general in Toronto for the UK. So Chris says, AI is truly a double-edged sword when it comes to OSINT work. I've used AI to generate Google Dorks and other search strings in various languages to find more poignant results. Additionally, Chris is a Southern bro. I don't know what he means by poignant in this context. If that makes sense to you, I don't know anything about tech. Additionally, I use AI to structure unstructured data and sometimes create pretty pictures to put into reports for my data. I'm very careful about my AI usage because I don't want to do my thinking for me. I think it can be easy to become reliant on a tool that always returns results, regardless if the results are true. AI hallucinates and is not a search engine, but can generate leads and offer quick translations, even if they're not 100% accurate. So Chris is taking the balanced approach, kind of the in favor approach, like Kirby is. And I will note, Chris and Kirby are very mainstream, but they're generalists in OSINT, whereas the practitioners in specifically anti-hate research tend to veer towards how crucial it is to have a human being's brain still operating in the process. The OSINT generalists are like, well, this is good and bad to AI, and I still use AI here and there. And so it might be that specifically anti-hate AI is a little bit more difficult. And we're talking about a lot of stuff in the dark web too. So actually there's an anti-hate researcher at Dalhousie University. He's friends with my friend Jay Heisler, who's a professor at Dal. Alex, I can't remember his name. He gave a great presentation on his research into dark web groups and into accelerationism. And accelerationism is the really paranoid rabbit hole. Once you learn about accelerationist groups, you see them everywhere. And you see their ideas and their lingo everywhere. So yeah, I guess the OSINT generalists tend to be more pro AI than specifically anti-hate campaigners. And there's Jordan 𝗙𝗂𝗿𝗍. Jordan is in my is one of the ones that was in my. Chris and Jordan are both in my Signal groups. If you're in an OSINT or cyber or military or law enforcement field and you want to join the Signal groups, let me know. Just I'll let you know, we're talking, you need to have a high tolerance for MAGA guys having meltdowns. And if your tolerance for MAGA guys having meltdowns is low, then this is not your favorite place. And so Jordan 𝗙𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗍, Canadian OSINT researcher. As an OSINT researcher, I've made use of AI in my work. I found it most useful when I need to automate the collection of large amounts of data for my investigations, since without it, I could spend hours collecting before I spend hours analyzing. By taking the collection process on my plate, I can spend more time looking for the needle in the haystack. I need to address the concerns of my clients. And so since I did this interview, which was for a separate project that was published about OSINT in the Canadian International Council, they're the Canadian think tank, Canadian International Council's Journal Open Canada. This I co-authored with my friend Jake. He is with Shadow Dragon when we published this. Shadow Dragon is one of the top OSINT tech firms. And Jake is a retired CIA officer, actually. And we know each other in person in DC. We went to Busboys and Poets for lunch. He drove me around. Last time I was in DC in February last year. Jake and I co-authored this. This was a couple months ago, October, November, it was, and so we co-authored a piece featuring Jordan's quotes and a couple other quotes by a couple others. I have my reservation about AI, but I believe as long as it never replaces a human eye for detail and investigations, it can open up many new avenues to find information. Jordan has been hopping OSINT jobs since that interview and is currently looking for work. So if you're hiring Jordan, if you're hiring for competent Canadians in the OSINT field, Jordan is living in Ontario and helped out a Rohingya refugee family I helped bring to Canada, brought them some furniture, took them out for a meal and stuff like that. Nice guy. There's Jess Ben-Arash. Jess is an Israeli Canadian OSINT investigator who I'm currently interviewing for the Good Men Project about fashion crime, because Jess investigated fashion crime. AI can be a very practical tool for OSINT work. For example, language models like Perplexity, ChatGPT, or Gemini are helpful when you need to identify new sources of databases, or databases especially in foreign jurisdictions. Recently, I used AI to figure out how to run land registry searches in the UK. That saved me a lot of time. Jess is a full-time professional OSINT investigator. A lot of people in the OSINT community know Jess. She is Toronto-based. Another cool use, and if you use Jess's name in anything, remember, it is not a middle, Ben is not a middle name, and it is Israeli last names. Ben-Arash is the full non-hyphenated last name. Another cool use, coding support. During a recent cyber breach investigation, I was drowning in raw data and asked ChatGPT to build me a simple script to parse it. I have very little experience with coding, but it worked beautifully. Sorry if I'm giving you just too many interviews here. I am a journalist, that's all I really communicated. The only reason I'm not easy to automate is because I challenge AI to get just a high enough quality of interviews and a high enough variety of interviews to keep anyone's attention. Beyond that, AI can be used creatively for data analytics, things like creating a timeline of events, comparing and contrasting ideas, or even generating graphs and tables. But be careful not to share sensitive data into these tools. Opt to AI services that prioritize confidentiality and encryption, like Proton's Lumo, whenever possible. So that's cool. I forgot that was in there. Like I said, I don't have a tech background myself. As said, AI isn't replacing OSINT investigators anytime soon. When it comes to analysis and reporting, nuance makes all the difference. Can people read this? Everyone can read this, right? Okay, good. If you want my slides, find me on LinkedIn, or I'll just hand out my email address after. Just find me on LinkedIn. You got my name. I can send my slides to anyone. That said, AI isn't replacing OSINT investigators anytime soon. When it comes to analysis and reporting, nuance makes all the difference. For instance, I recently tested Gemini's deep research function by asking it to research me. It found my OSINT work as well as my old IMDb page from when I was acting, but it mistakenly concluded there were two different people with my name in Toronto, which is highly unlikely. That's a good example of where human judgment and contextual understanding are still irreplaceable. AI has just learned to figure me out. I was making joke after joke around AI for years, not having either lumping me in with a literally deceased person in Alabama, or lumping me in with and I had no idea who I was until like a ChatGPT I asked last week or a week before. I'm like, who is Jay Heisler? I haven't tried ChatGPT since like 2 years earlier at this point. I just logged in using my Gmail. Who is Jay Heisler? I got a pretty good answer, and it was me and only me, and it was a pretty good recap of my career. I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. So I wanted to make a joke. I'm like, how famous is Jay Heisler? I didn't say Jay Heisler, the journalist. I didn't say Jay Heisler from Canada. It is how famous is Jay Heisler? And it gave an answer. So I just posted that to LinkedIn. And people commented on being like, hey, you're like slightly above average famous because AI thinks it. And I was like, yeah. And so AI is actually not that bad on me. I figured they're pretty bad. You know who I hated though? Claude. ChatGPT gave me a really good review, and Claude just did not care for me. And I used a photo of somebody who was in me, who was like middle-aged, maybe the deceased gentleman in Alabama. I do not know. But Claude just does not like me. But ChatGPT really does. Okay. David Taxer. David, since I interviewed David, OSINT is a wild field. If anyone knows Larry Cameron, I just actually called him before this started. I have a dry apartment, and I believe that has created a year-round cough for the last 3 years. Don't worry, I haven't been feeling sick. David Taxer, and if anyone knows Larry Cameron, I called him to invite him before the event began, but he's actually in the Middle East doing OSINT training. He's specifically focuses on Special Victims Unit OSINT, and he's one of the top people in the world on that. And I hosted him for a guest lecture that I organized, that he gave at CoWork Halifax as part of my monthly, what is now a monthly speaker series that I organized. So if you're on the Meetup app, look at a Halifax Geopolitics discussion group. And a Halifax Geopolitics discussion I've been organizing monthly since June, but on and off every few months since like 2023. So Larry was one of my original guests in that. And Larry's great. He comes over to like potlucks at my apartment and stuff like that. Larry is one of the top people in the world in OSINT, actually lives in Halifax. And I first met Larry when I was invited to LinkedIn Live lecture on social links, on the OSINT software social links. And I'm just like, yo, this guy has a straight up Cape Breton accent. Who is this person? And then we just met. And so I'm just like, so Larry's awesome. I recommend getting to know him. He's just floating around the community all the time. But Larry has a very, has a life that's all over the map. David Taxer is symptomatic of that. He has actually moved cities because he was victim of Russian hackers targeting him, leaking all his information, hacking all his devices, compromising everything. He disappeared from one city and reappeared in another a few weeks later with this story about how that's what just happened. So OSINT anti-hate is one of the most dangerous things you can do research, but OSINT itself is no picnic. There's a lot of that floating around, the challenge is to harness the speed of AI without losing access to the data itself as platforms struggle under the load of automated scraping. Recent changes underline this tension. In September 2025, Google quietly disbanded that parameter to curb AI scraping. That move disrupted market intelligence and OSINT's tools that depend on bulk search pulls, and it foreshadows what will happen as more platforms escalate anti-scraping measures. So basically, I am not the world's foremost expert in what that meant, but I'm sure a bunch of tech-savvy people like yourself can.
They're going to say, "Oh, you want to do that? Here, it'll cost you blah 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 subscription." That's all they're going to do.
Thank you.
And 𝗙𝗲 is like already does something similar right now. If you don't know what 𝗙𝗲 is, it's a paid for subscription. A lot of people actually pay for. So, and weirdly enough, what it uses a lot of indexers from Google and all these things. What it does is it strips out all the ads. You get more relevant searches and stuff like that. But as one of their paid tiers is, oh, you want to, because they're big on the AI too, but they won't push it on. You only get it if you want it. One of the things they have is like, oh, you have your own LLM. Pay for this fee and email us, get an API key, and then power your LLM with our search. So that's what's going to happen. they're seeing an opportunity to charge.
Something I wouldn't do after Kirby's presentation is pay through the nose for a service and expect it to even want to give me OSINT results and specifics at all. So that's interesting. I wonder if there is an OSINT safe version of that.
Like in terms of like.
Most of the time, that's where human comes in. So what Justin would do, Justin being my own trainer, would be actually run it by somebody. What do you think of this? Does this seem good to you? Does this seem real? Is there something you see holes in this? But it's also fact checking, like basic journalism. For the most part, OSINT is pretty good. Like nobody's gonna believe me, but I met people from D&D in Canada, DOD in the US, Global Affairs in Canada, State Department in the US. I've worked pretty closely with folk like that, and a lot of them have no idea what they're talking about. They only know the siloed conflict or disaster or topic they've worked on, and the next conflict or disaster topic over. They couldn't tell you the first thing about it. OSINT people really kind of comparatively know what's going on more. It is the most accurate source of information.
So I know that regardless of what Google wants to do, at least the big business, so any business that has like even a decent amount of money, like for example, we tried, like one time I tried to scrape the Kijiji as well as at the same time as Etsy, at the same time as like some other one, and I did it maybe 10 times, and after 10 times, so for one thing, Etsy didn't even allow me back on the platform from my IP address. So I tried to load their website, and they wouldn't. And there was a message that popped up and said, "We detect scraping from your site," and that was Etsy, that wasn't Google. And now Kijiji's doing it, but they're just not allowing it. They're not telling you that they're not allowed.
I'm not a cybersecurity expert. I'm a journalist, but I can say if I were to right now embark on spying on people on my laptop, the odds of the most terrifying reminder in the world that I'm not as invisible as I think I am happening are 100%, depending on what I did. A lot. It would surprise you who I can't say it would surprise you who is just going to ping you if they think that's what you're doing. So do get training before you do this. So other uses of OSINT, yeah, the veteran charity signal groups, which I told you about. And my other use of OSINT, I got involved in anti-human trafficking, OSINT for a bit, hosting a speaker series with Larry, got some publications with Chris and Vaughn, who's an anti-human trafficking survivor advocate. And then I published twice, including this month with Sandra Denise-Sig. She is an anti-human trafficking survivor advocate turned emergency management professional based in the US. And she normally publishes with Homeland Security Today. I also published this month with Homeland Security Today on art crime, and so there's my article there. It was the worst timing possible, the absolute lowest point in everybody's relationship with the Department of Homeland Security. I was assigned this. I couldn't really say no. I don't want to take them off. So if they were like, "Hey, we want you to publish with us," I'm like, "All right." And other use of OSINT is a fun one. The only thing I really do in OSINT myself is university recommendations. And if you want to go to a university for a master's program or a PhD program, or somebody wants to know if a university is good for their kids, then the best thing you can do is just OSINT it. Reddit, social media, you name it. Just find as much as you can, and you'll fast know if the student experience at that university is not all it's cracked up to be. There's nothing any university administration, no matter how savvy they are at PR, can hide from angry Redditors. And so that is, I'll end on that. I didn't know time flies. It is almost 8 o'clock. So if we've got some time for questions, I just feel some questions. So if anyone has any more, yeah. So.
Just regarding the 764 person crown looking for the flat charge at the end of January, the sole remaining charge is possession of child porn. And second question, with regards to like when you're doing your research, verification to does the use of the advocacy system come into play for verification and likelihood of information being accurate or true?
I am a journalist. I have no tech knowledge whatsoever, but I can say if you want the accuracy of your OSINT results are not journalism standards. The accuracy of your OSINT results are supposedly the same standards as a government agency. These OSINT investigators are spies for hire. You're assumed to be as accurate as a policy analyst for Global Affairs Canada or the Department of National Defense, or they wouldn't pay you. So I can't tell you the tricks of the trade entirely, but I can say a professional OSINT analyst would be assumed to be as accurate and have their information as verified and as reliable as if you got that information directly from any of the experts who are with the government agency right now.
Generative AI, because we all know there's stories out there how much it hallucinates and makes things up because the AI is just a prediction.
I need a glass of water. Actually, my throat's parching up. I'm gonna. Oh no! Thank you. Well, I just added EFO to Facebook, so I'm gonna thank EFO on Facebook. I'm gonna tag him. So how much harder? Can you repeat the question?
So I was saying, how has AI? Does it make verification harder because of its tendency to make up things or predict what the next word is, right? I mean, it all depends on the LLM you're using, the quantization of the model and all that stuff.
Well, there's
and before that, what kind of tools did you use before? I mean,
there's common sense issues like AI slop videos. Who even knows how good those are getting? So there's common sense stuff like that. But for the most part, every single OSINT, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. Every single OSINT person I interviewed said there's just challenges with stuff like that, but it's stuff that it's stuff a high school student could guess, like is this video real or something. For the most part, the veracity of information is still pretty good. I guess I got to drive. I got to drive from Wolfville to Halifax and back Tuesday. And my drive was a Canadian military officer, a captain in the Canadian Air Force, who's a military stakeholder engagement lead. He talked to me about a brief he got on disinformation. And he was told in 2015 that already entire online ecosystems, like heavily ideological comment sections on Facebook or heavily ideological comments, entire conversations on Twitter were already bots only. This was 2015. Yeah. So, at this point, the sophistication of that should be beyond compare. However, in the signal groups, most OSINT people like Justin or like Kirby or like the people I work with, the veteran charities, what they're going to do is they're going to harvest videos that are taken from somebody's cell phone in somewhere like Iran or Afghanistan, or they're going to harvest information by tweets. And then it comes down to also the reliability of the account. So if a lot of the times it is human, as in I know this activist who's in Afghanistan because they're the cousin of the person at this charity. And therefore, if they say this is happening, this is happening. And if they took this video themselves, they took this video themselves. So it effectively renders it a human network. But then, of course, during a big crisis, the signal groups are awash with videos. And so it's hard to tell which are AI and which not. But for the most part, AI videos are not haunting the signal groups like a constant thorn in everyone's side, like you would assume. For the most part, you can eyeball an account pretty good to see if it's okay, especially if you speak the local language. There hasn't been a serious issue with AI videos yet, which is highly counterintuitive. But for the most part, the AI video disinformation purveyors, the AI video disinformation purveyors do not have so much time in their hands that they're interested in fooling like 100 people in a signal group. They are interested in fooling OSINT Defender, the Twitter account. Boy, are they interested in fooling OSINT Defender. Because Musk will retweet OSINT. Yeah, Musk will retweet OSINT Defender. So AI videos are targeting not the run-of-the-mill OSINT analysts or OSINT investigators. AI videos are targeting the major viral accounts that do OSINT from the Ukraine war and stuff. And there, it's quite plausible that a large amount of it is probably fake. I wouldn't trust any of those websites. Any of the major, like any Twitter account with OSINT in the name that has like 15,000 followers or something, I don't know, whatever. It's probably that probably has an ideological bone to pick with everybody, and it's definitely got an agenda, and there's a lot of shady stuff that gets pervaded in those. Like I saw one of the major ones, one of the really mainstream ones that's retweeted by everybody, announced that U.S. forces are going to pull out of Iraq and Syria. They announced this conclusively, like it's going to happen within the next month, and they announced it a year ago. And they just do that, and people just see that, and then they don't check, and they think it's true. And I bet you a bunch of people are walking around right now in the U.S. and Canada and Europe thinking that has already long happened. And it's like it's just a lot of that is just disinformation. From the get-go. So a lot of the accounts sharing disinformation have a disinformation agenda, maybe.
So how how do you start your investigation? I know in the past, from the tools that we've used before, if you're doing a hacking thing, you're doing OSINT basically on the company and the people who work there. So you're hunting their LinkedIn, you're looking at Twitter, you're looking at Facebook. Before, Twitter used to be able to search a geographic search on Twitter. We used to say, find everyone within 100 kilometers of this location or something like that, or tweet or whatever. There used to be tools that are still out there like Recon NG, there's Multigo, OSINT framework, a lot of these tools there. What does AI give you over those tools?
Currently, there's inconclusive evidence that it gives you any superiority over those tools. A fun story, actually, I was going to share about Multigo. So the North America director of Social Links, which is a Multigo dependent product, added me to LinkedIn when he saw what I was doing on Signal and offered me free Social Links keys. And this is what Larry did his lecture in. You know, so Larry. And so he was the North America director, and he's from Ukraine, and he was interested in helping in the Ukraine war cause. His next job after North America director for Social Links was actually to settle in an Indian Ocean tourist island and start a delivery company to the rural houses of tourists and expats who live along the coast far away from the big cities that weren't served by like Uber Eats or whatever. So his after one of the biggest OSINT companies in the world, his North America director, his next job was to just cover deliveries in this Indian Ocean tourist island. That was kind of cool. Yeah. So it's OSINT. The characters you kind of meet in the OSINT field are kind of are more my interest in the kind of anything tech savvy, because I don't have a mind for it really myself. But I appreciate really technical questions. I don't want to shut them down. You asked you asked a technical question as well, and I kind of froze up. I don't really know how to answer a really technical question because I don't want to pretend I really understand the full depth of it. But as a journalist, I guess my job is trying to distill this to be more kind of accessible to everybody. And yeah. Any other? We're running out of time. I guess I can take one more question.
You got lots of time.
Oh, is it till 8:30?
Whenever they kick us out, we're good.
Okay, cool. I asked our receptionist, and she's here till 10, but I do not have until 10. I actually have a phone call with a congressional staffer, retired congressional staffer, after this. So
whenever you want to run away.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, any other questions? Yep.
How does somebody get into anti-hate or anti-RWE OSINT?
Like with all OSINT, I think it's really networking based. It really helps networking.
Yeah.
It really helps if you just get an idea of what you're getting into. So people are going to be way more comfortable around you if you have any idea who's already doing this and what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just call yourself, you can call yourself whatever you want. Nobody's going to stop you. But if you're making friends with people doing it, then people are going to be like, okay, who do you know? And then people are going to want to meet you and want to get to know you. And so I think that's something advice I give to my students at the art college is the number one way to get to know anything is to become a practitioner. If you are not a practitioner in it, it doesn't matter what you call yourself. You can call yourself an expert. You can call yourself Napoleon of this topic. It doesn't matter. If you be a practitioner in it or whatever, nobody cares. So I think find somebody in this field, ask them if they want your help volunteering on the project, and then you're in already. As soon as the project is over, you're a practitioner in it. People know you. You know the field well enough to talk about it like an insider. So just it's networking only. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you know what you want to journal about? How do you know what you want to do?
Me?
Yeah.
I lost my job. Voice of America got defunded by the Trump administration a year ago, and so I'm going back to school to study education. But I'm in the meantime, I'm just publishing on a freelance basis. I got 3 publications in magazines this month, and I got I got a couple more in blogs. But for the most part, Voice of America was paying me enough to live on, plus the art college that collapsed. And I'm hoping to go back to Voice of America. A friend who is a retired Canadian Army officer, he was the head of Army intelligence in Afghanistan, John McLaren. He told me in front of a room full of witnesses, here I'm saying it again on camera, he was like, Jay, when Voice of America gets up and running again, you should work for them again. I'm like, so it's not treason. You wouldn't yourself put me in cuffs. And he's like, no, I think you should work for them again. So if Voice of America gets refunded by the Trump administration, I am going to go back to working for Voice of America. At that point, it's up to my editor. They did carry like, yes.
Now it's become more of a propaganda arm as opposed to, or at least that's the belief.
I couldn't-
That's the conspiracy theory.
I couldn't have been called propaganda more already. I've been working for Voice of America. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
considering what its control is and how things are these days, do you feel comfortable with that?
I have found working for VOA that the VOA editors are extremely dedicated to the premise that they are America's BBC, and that they are like BBC, which is government funded, and in part.
But this is now.
The editor who told me that, his job before Voice of America was the Washington Times. So I'm pretty sure that ideological wing is going to maintain the premise. And I shouldn't say this with the recording on, but if you befriend journalists from Russia and China, something they'll all tell you, I think I'm such a smart North American product of the North American education system. I will always go, wow, that must be scary being a journalist in Russia or China. And every time they will go, no, nobody has ever told me to do anything like that. And that's because you just know. You just know what you do and you know what you don't do already, or you're not going to keep the job.
That's a lot of historical based opinion, right? You know, it's different now. Everything is suddenly very, very different.
Yeah, and I'm curious about like topics, like things that you would see in these chats that are different today in terms of species. Like, is it cyclical? Is it linear? Like, how does that look and change?
In Voice of America or in OSINT?
You know,
Oh, is what cyclical or linear? Sorry.
Maybe specifically mean about anti-hate or yeah.
Like in terms of the I guess themes is the wrong word, but the things that you're seeing that are coming up like consistently today.
Oh,
versus-
yeah, sorry. I wish I had dwelled more on that. There are extreme outliers that are growing really fast, like 764. 764 has gone from a relatively obscure topic a year ago to an extremely mainstream one within a very short period of months. And the arrest in Halifax was part of that. And so the 764, the rise of 764 is an anomaly. There's no historical precedent to it. It's very scary. But a lot of the hate groups that sprouted out around the initial Proud Boys kind of thing, that's kind of dissipated. And that's kind of like, that hasn't really reconstituted. So I would say that history may be cyclical, or it may repeat itself, or it may rhyme, but at the moment, it's very volatile. There's no predictability. Everyone's just being blindsided by totally new things. And the thing that was the issue last time is gone. It's as arbitrary and volatile as anything else in politics right now. I can say that I don't know anyone who would try to predict it. So I have a friend, 𝗙𝗲𝗁𝗁. She's an anti-hate. She's an anti-hate campaigner in North Carolina. She teaches at University of North Carolina, and she's the one who got the SSHRC funding, Canadian federal government funding. Her and I met when I was introduced to her because I wanted to study. I was given an article with Ian Bremmer's G0 Media, which was never published, to study active clubs, which are another totally new thing in hate groups. Active clubs are MMA style gyms that focus on the manosphere, on disenfranchised men, and train them into far right ideas. And at the time, 𝗙𝗲𝗁 was like, well, active clubs kind of disappeared in Canada ever since there was a big crackdown on them. I'm like, okay. And then I lost the article. And then Chardon came at random a couple months later, being like, "Oh, active clubs are back in Canada." I'm like, what? And active clubs have just sudden huge resurgence in Canada, and they just revived all their online presence, and they're all over the place in Canada all of a sudden. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's very arbitrary. It's very shadowy. Like with 764, it's not clear what's politics and what's crime. And I think with the anti-hate groups, what is politics and what is crime and what is a lone wolf really blend together very fast. And so I wouldn't call myself enough of an expert to ascertain what is each case by case basis, basically. So basically the volatility of it is so great that nobody can predict it. Certainly isn't cyclical, and it certainly isn't linear. It's just all over the map. If that makes sense. That's my pattern recognition assessment.
But different from what you would have seen like 5 or 10 years ago.
Impossibly. 5 years ago, there was the appearance, and everybody anticipated that a sort of paramilitary far-right normalization would change the face of North America forever, and that is not materialized at all. Instead, most discussions about the far right on Blue Sky, which I'm very active in, talk about messaging in official government sources, and far right groups becoming a permanent militia presence in the U.S. and Canada has not succeeded in what everyone assumed would have happened around 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. So it's very unpredictable, and I don't think anybody would have gotten it right. And if anything, 764 is not the Proud Boys, and it's not going to overthrow the government, but it's terrifying because of, like a lot of internet subcultures, we're still just kind of gauging how deep into youth culture has gotten. It's how deep into youth culture has gotten could be a lot more than we think. But the idea of that 5 or 6 years ago, it would have been assumed that by now we would be living in a country, both Canada and the U.S., because Proud Boys was founded in Canada. Does anybody not know this? Proud Boys was co-founded by one of the co-founders of Vice magazine. So one of the co-founders of Vice magazine founded Proud Boys in Canada. Everybody would have assumed 5 or 6 years ago that by now the Proud Boys would be as much a part of North American life as any militia in a conflict zone is, and that just never materialized. So, yeah.
I'm wondering if there's a anti-colonial / decolonizing lens that is being used in this sort of work, because we're talking about governments like the U.S. and Canada that have been illegally occupying other people's lands for a long ass time and destabilizing governments in all over the world. So I am wondering, is there an ethical lens in this work to make sure that you're not empowering colonizers to continue to colonize?
Well, that actually ties in marvelously with my previous answer, in so much as the threat of a paramilitary far right never really materialized, but the threat of a mainstreamed far right governance has precedent. So the British National Party in the UK was a very serious threat in the UK when I was there in 2012 through 2013, and then it just disappeared as a threat because I did a report on this for American Military University. The conservative government under Boris Johnson was seen as so favorable to the British National Party that they were just like, they didn't even bother being a party anymore. All the British National Party supporters and the groundswell of supporters just joined the Conservative Party under Boris Johnson. But then, of course, they didn't like the new leadership eventually, and then they tried to bring the country to a standstill, throwing up roadblocks and checkpoints and riots, and that all happened over the last 12 months. And so the nature of what shifts from government policy to militia actions and back again is probably just a relationship of convenience at this point. I think it's a relationship at this point. Government policy in much of the West is so kind of openly fascistic that it has to be considered a continuation of what the Proud Boys was doing. So yeah, and that includes That includes heavily neocolonial. Is the answer? My thoughts are heavily neocolonial actions around the world, and really obvious colonial actions in some places, which I won't mention. But also, of course, the continuation of domestic colonial policies, like settler colonialism in Canada, was used as a wedge issue. I had friends who were progressive who got me on the phone and complained during the fishing protests here in 2020 because I was a journalist working on that issue. And I was really surprised by that. I was really offended, and I didn't really know how to react, that somebody would feel like I was an appropriate person to say that to. But I didn't really, there wasn't really a paramilitary far-right angle to the fishing protests, but it hardened a violence that shifted between the government's violence and the violence of white fishing group, that kind of shifted between them and back, that kind of foreshadowed how mainstream this stuff would get. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So in my perspective, I may not fully understand it, but I see like throughout the years a huge erosion of trust in digital infrastructure, and even in official organizations, just like we got the United States government that is now just posting digitally changed AI generated images. So I want to ask a question about just trust in general when it comes into OSINT. How has that impacted your work? I can bet maybe years before, when you published things, it was taken more as facts, and now this world has changed. People don't trust as much. So I want to hear your perspective on it.
Somebody told me in DC, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this because I'm on camera. Somebody told me in DC that at one point American news were running footage of a country that they wanted to bomb, and the footage was from a different war. So there was disinformation before, there's you can kind of like you can kind of see it as just a continuation of what was going on before, really. I can say that for the most part, it's not about like, has AI verified this is a non-AI video. It's about how reliable are your sources. As a journalist, I can say journalists don't really live in fear of being duped by an AI video as much as you think, because so little of journalism relies on the veracity of a single video. That's more of a Hollywood idea of journalism, where there's this video leaked. In reality, the testimony of a human being is usually a news story more than a video or a photograph is. And because to be fair to AI and the rise of AI, you could always doctor a video or a photograph. Even before like computer generated animation, you could doctor, like the Soviet Union could doctor a photograph like anybody's business. I mean, anyone could doctor a photograph even before Jurassic Park made it, you know, like, you kind of like, so it hasn't even changed that much. For the most part, journalists have always treated a single video or a single photograph as less important than the testimony of a person. And so it's the testimony of a person is the kind of highest form of testimony in journalism. And I think in OSINT that carries into OSINT, it carries into government stuff as well. Yeah.
So I have a question about your use of the word propaganda.
Yeah.
Who says we should not be using that word anymore?
Academics who are literally academics who are literally contracted to work with NATO decided somewhere in the 10, 15 years ago range that from now on, it's not propaganda, it is disinformation. Disinformation because it is not up for debate. It is bad. We don't like it. We know how it's made. Russian military guys are just typing on their laptops. In reality, it's Russian hackers a lot of the time. But Russian military guys are typing on their laptops, and they are creating this falsehood, and it's not propaganda in the sense that this is us, the Russian government, doing this, or it's not propaganda in the sense that, haha, we're going to be sneaky and pretend this is something it isn't. It's disinformation in the sense that it's just slop from the beginning. Even before AI, it was slop. It was bots. So it's not an art. it's not a form of writing. It's not a form of skill even. It's just slop. And I think technology was the difference between propaganda and disinformation as concepts, really.
So if a government was to release a not necessarily doctored video, but a video of a previous war or previous horrible conditions to justify imposing their regime on a location, is that disinformation or is that propaganda?
I would call that propaganda. Somebody would be hesitant to call that disinformation depending on what the news outlet is. They could claim it was a mistake by the journalist. They could claim maybe it was me, the journalist who aired that story, didn't know that.
Let's say today's White House government on Twitter.
That would be called on Blue Sky, which is my finger on the pulse of what things are called now, would be called disinformation and not propaganda. Propaganda would be seen as almost favorable because propaganda requires there be the moral argument that everybody's entitled to do propaganda for their own side. Disinformation obliterates that. Disinformation, this is pure slop. And so the Blue Sky take on the White House publishing a falsehood would be disinformation, I think.
So the White House publishes on the same level as a Russian bot used to once upon a time, because they're both disinformation. One is not propaganda set to potentially serve an agenda, but disinformation could necessarily also be set to serve an agenda.
I can't opine who is a Russian bot and who isn't.
Sure.
But I can say that the Blue Sky take on that would be the term disinformation, and it's not just the Russians doing disinformation. So there's a lot of hacker groups from a lot of just kind of more obscure wars, like Myanmar and Sudan and Syria, who became really active, and so a lot. It's not just Russians. More or less any war could have a hacker group that's sending bots out, like with drones, information operations have become pretty accessible to on a low budget. And then you get into pig butchering, which is Larry's business. Pig butchering is the fact that a lot of disinformation is actually created by people who are themselves being trafficked. They're being held in scam centers and unable to leave. It's the source of your disinformation being just the Russian military, as I've already said, is laughably simplistic. And it could be anybody. It could trace back to the Russian military, or it could not. You don't even know anymore. It could be a marketing company in K Street in Washington D.C. They got paid to make somebody's product look good.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Who is the customer of OSINT
Whoever pays. It's sort of a mercenary field. But of course, I doubt 𝗙𝗲𝗁 or Justin Charters are going to take money from North Korea to do an OSINT investigation. So you have your own personal morality that you bring to it, but it's just purely private security. It's whoever hires you. And the signal groups I run aren't like that. The signal groups I run are veteran charities, so they have a mandate in their charter of each charity that they're going to serve their own patriotism. So that narrows the spectrum of what I'm exposed to myself. But of course, it's a big community. So I just add people in OSINT to LinkedIn all day, and I have had some adventures. So I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you have a good reason to.
No, I'm not saying I have like information that I'm sitting on who can I sell $50,000 worth of information to, but I just wonder, it's like if someone was to take up the field, right? How you said network earlier in your conversation, that people will know about you by becoming a practitioner in the field. But for example, what makes someone like I think you said their name was Kirby in your presentation?
Yeah.
Post workshops in order to learn something like this. So like I understand you might be interested, and so you start digging for information and you find information and that becomes valuable to people, right? But who are the people, right? Like who are interested in this, and how do they understand or know you are in?
OSINT is such a niche field that the people paying for these seminars are mostly people who want to break into being OSINT investigators themselves. And we're talking about a lot of people who lost jobs in tech from AI. And so there's a huge wave of layoffs in the white collar hit OSINT like a tsunami. A lot of those people want to get jobs in OSINT. Are any of them going to make it? Lots of them. It's a booming field. So it's not a bad idea to rebrand OSINT. I was telling Nadia she should try to learn OSINT. If you actually try to rebrand an OSINT, there's a lot of opportunities for you. And it is worth a shot. See if you're a good fit. But it's about if you can network really more than anything else. Because it's not abnormal for an OSINT trainer to tell me to stay away from another trainer because they don't like the quality of their training, stuff like that. You should know not only who to talk to and who not to talk to, but also just like what is good training, what isn't. But from what I've heard, you'll know bad training when you receive it because you didn't learn anything. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Are we running out? It's getting a little late. Is it? I'm running out of energy myself. Are we?
What time is it now? Oh, I mean, we have lots of time, so.
So I'll take one more question, if that's all right. Okay, perfect. I need to get to my phone call. But I'm grateful for everyone to show up, and you can find me. You have my name. Add me to LinkedIn if you want these slides, or just a network or whatever. If you want to meet people in OSINT, I can just give you a referral to get training or anything like that. And thanks for showing up.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, that was fun.
How do I turn this off?
I'll just.
Never try.
It never turn on.